All right, sorry about that. I was somewhere about right here with the equity theory and the iPad went on strike. So we locked up. So sorry about that, but hopefully you got most of that theory. I think you did. You know, it's more motivating to people if they feel like the pay is balanced out. So what are we looking at? You know, a lot of things can impact whether something feels fair or equal. You know, again, what are their skill sets? How hard do they work? Do they have different responsibilities or stressors that somebody has? Again, we're not saying that where there shouldn't be a difference in pay, but we need to be able to justify it. Now, we talked in the very first part in chapter 11 about affirmative action, and we talked about, I mentioned there was going to be a slide coming up about this whole gender gap, and you know how women are not being compensated for the exact same jobs that men are doing, and how our country has a history of that. And so not exactly affirmative action, but a similar concept where should we be doing more to balance out these pay gaps. And again, I can't tell from me looking at that to then filming this if you guys can see this slide or not, but I'll read a little bit to you because I think it's pretty interesting. So when women are younger, 15 to 24, there's only a $3,000 pay gap. Now there shouldn't be any gap, but it's only $3,000 then. But by the time they're 45 to 64, the pay gap is equal to $23,000. What's that saying? It's saying the women are earning less and oftentimes earning less for the exact same job. Okay, sexual harassment. Again, I had a small business and we still had to deal with sexual harassment. So it's out there. I think it's one of those topics that can be a little bit goofy to talk about. I mean, if you're in the HR department, you're used to talking about sexual harassment. But if you're just a manager and a leader and trying to get business done, I think sometimes it can be feel weird to talk about sexual harassment. That being said, it's still very, very important. And so here's where I like to draw your attention with regards to sexual harassment. A couple things. One is everybody's different, so it's really, really hard to know that even though it wasn't maybe offensive to you, it might be offensive to someone else in the room. That someone else in the room may not even be willing to speak up. So sometimes you're not even aware that the harassment or the hostile work environment is even going on. The obvious sexual harassment scenarios, which they call quid pro quo here, but hey, you do this for me and I'll let you do that. Or if you don't do this for me, I'm going to do that to you. Those are obvious sexual harassment ones. Those are a little bit more common, but again, you still have some women and males that don't feel comfortable coming forward in that. And so sometimes it's going on and businesses aren't even aware of it. But going back to more of what I'm calling more the subtle features of sexual harassment, basically if an employee is not comfortable, you know, it can be a hostile work environment, it can be attributed to sexual harassment. So what does that mean? It means to be extra aware of, you know, jokes that you might tell, language that you might use, images that you might look at on work time. Not only be aware of what you're doing, but also being aware of what others can observe that you're doing. And then kind of the old adage of bullying, like if I'm a bully and I'm bullying someone right in front of me and you're standing there watching and aren't saying a word or stopping me, you're just as bad as the bully. Kind of the same thing with sexual harassment is if you know somebody's uncomfortable and you're kind of standing there giggling too, or you're not doing anything to protect them, you're really just as guilty. And so I don't worry as much about the big sexual harassment pieces. It's this cultural thing, the subtle ones that I think can go unnoticed and still can be very detrimental. Gives us a couple what if scenarios, but you guys can think through those all the time. Childcare, again, another challenge, stressor for a lot of folks. Man, I gotta get out of here to get to my kid, you know. So anything that businesses can do that can alleviate that, whether it be paying for childcare, putting childcare on site just to help with the whole logistics of getting them picked up, maybe providing for childcare only when they're sick, still a nice benefit. So businesses are always thinking about that as a way to retain good employees. With the baby boomers aging, You have the same thing now with regards to working adults trying to help and care for their elderly parents. Again, so elderly care is a new sort of concept that most HR people haven't had to think about. Just some costs on taking care of your parents. Drug and alcohol use, again, going back to the story of my dad and him working in unions, and he would come home and tell me he gets so frustrated. That guy would show up drunk at work, and his only punishment for his first offense would be to send him home paid. And he just couldn't get his mind around. So this guy broke a rule, came in, we sent him basically back to the bar and paid him to be there. So those sorts of things are some of the things that he would get so frustrated with. But in the workplace, really, drugs and alcohol, just no place for it, right? It's not professional. Do it on your own time, sort of thing. But and then of course, if you're in any sort of safety environment, there's a real risk there. So be aware of that. Violence in the workplace, again, one of those things we hope never happens, but clearly it does. We had earlier, Tyler was talking about, even somebody threw a box of bolts at somebody, so people can get on edge. Okay, great. So that's all I've got for this. Remember, we are not meeting in class next week. It'll be online, your second exam. I think it opens up Monday, and I'll get those other lectures videoed and put out, as well as Learn Smart and quizzes. So we're done, and I'll talk to you guys I'll see you guys in person in a couple weeks. Thanks.